And welcome to the blog today. So, today we're going to talk about an organization or a product that I actually have extensive experience with. But they put out a report that I wanted to talk to you guys about. The company's called um, Securonics, and it's the Securonics 2020 Insider Threat Report that we're going to talk about. Now, Securonics is a technology that uses an algorithm to monitor your employees' behavior. So it's behavioral monitoring. And I actually had the opportunity to utilize this product and implement this product in an organization that I work for. But it's based on this concept of insider threat. So the article was talking about flight risk employees, and flight risk employees being defined as employees on the verge of resigning or otherwise leaving a job. And that's what a flight risk employee is. And it basically said flight risk employees are involved in 60% of insider cyber security incidents. Now, insider threat, of course, that's the people that are working for you that you pay to sit there that are purposely. Insider threat is either malicious or non-malicious. And for this activity, we're talking about malicious insiders, those that are about to leave the job, but and their activities change. So between 2 months to 2 weeks before they're leaving, they start to do some certain things. If they're really going to take information from your organization. So going back to when I was running operations, and anytime an employee would actually give notice if they reached a certain level, if they had access to sensitive information, we would not only monitor them until they left, but monitor them from look at their past behavior to see if there's any, look at our different technologies to see if there's any activity that was suspicious. So, Securonics is an organization that has a tool that allows you to monitor or behavioral monitor your employees. Now, some depending, I'm sure they probably tell me that I'm not saying it right, because sometimes companies don't want to, when you start typecasting or behavioral monitoring of employees, that sounds worse than it really is. But ultimately, you want to have knowledge into the activities of your employees when you know they're about to leave. And so usually employees exfiltrate data. Okay, they'll take data out of your company through email, through web uploads. Maybe they're using Dropbox, or they upload something to Box or something like that. And or they'll download stuff to USB drives. Of course, organizations are prohibiting the use of removable media drives. And actually, I have two laptops that don't even have a removable media drive on it. But I have a Mac, I have a couple Macs. I have PC behind me. My PC behind me has a removable media drive. But in any event, um, they disable the port for you to actually be able to insert a piece of storage, a storage stick or something like that, to download data, which is an older model, because a lot of organizations are using, especially now that we're in this pandemic, they're using infrastructure as a service, or they're using cloud providers to deliver or to be able to do their functional day to day work. And it's becoming a lot more complicated. Your traditional data leak prevention tools don't necessarily work, but it's still a base, right? So when you're looking at technologies like Securonics, you still have to have an underlying base of things that you're doing in regards to understanding the behavior or activities of your employees. You have to be logging stuff to begin with. You have your DLP technology, data leak prevention technology. You also have data classification. If you're actually classifying data in a certain way, that should trigger additional protections, right? And then, of course, you have your administrative users, your admin users, your super users, your privileged users, whatever your flavor, however you want to describe it. They are the ones that are usually, they have access to everything. And so you want to definitely be able to monitor those. So it starts to get complicated when you start to add on certain things, like an employee who has access to keys to the kingdom that decides that they're going to go work for a competitor. Do you have the capability to prevent them from taking everything that they've ever done, and or everything that they have access to, downloading it or uploading it to some cloud provider and taking it out of your organization. Now, I know you'll say, oh, well, Mary, we have confidentiality agreements, we have non-disclosure agreements, they have non-compete agreements and all of these things from a contractual perspective. But little known fact, and you guys heard me say this before, if you haven't put anything in place to protect that information, you're going to have a hard time claiming in a suit that this was sensitive information if everybody had access to it, right? So some of the things that came out in the article, it says 80% of flight risk employees take proprietary data when leaving. 43.75% forward it to their email. 16% of people abuse cloud collaboration tools. 10% perform downloads of aggregated data during the attack. So when they're actually leaving the organization, they're down, you'll see the activity, and no one wakes up in the morning and says, I'm going to take this data from my employee when I leave. But when you start getting into that interview process and and it's one of the cool things you can do, at least you used to do. It's been a while since I actually was hands-on with this tool, but employees that are going to job sites, all right, and you can actually see that activity. If you're through certain log, you can see that your employees are going, or they're uploading something called resume, or they, and all this other stuff. And it all depends on how big brother-ish you want to be, but there are possibilities that you have depending on what you are. So I mean, depending on which area, which industry you're in. If you are heavily proprietary, like something like a pharmaceutical company, some of these things could be helpful to you to prevent your formula or your technology from getting out of there. IT companies are the same, and banking companies are the same. You keep that proprietary information close to the chest, because that's what different that makes you different in the marketplace. I was going to try to still say that word, but we're going to move on. But so according to the article, the highest level of data exfiltration or stealing of data is in the pharmaceutical, financial, and IT industries. Heavily proprietary, at least in pharma and IT, heavily proprietary information that organizations are now, they'll leave an organization and take information with them. So again, I just found it really interesting that you kind of sort of knew this. I mean, back, like I said, when I was doing incident response, when I was in ops full time, that was one of the checks that came up. If like, oh, so and so is leaving, especially if they were an executive, so and so's leaving, so we're going to add additional monitoring to make sure that they're not doing anything. And you have that, hopefully you have that capability within your security operations center or those individuals that are running security operations for you. But like I said, interesting article, interesting times. Going through a pandemic, people are losing their jobs, right? If you don't have the capability to see whether or not they're at home downloading or printing or whatever your information, and you don't have any visibility into that, that's a possible problem. So if you don't prevent them from doing that in whatever cloud application that you're using, that's going to be a problem. So extension of that, where anybody that plans layoffs and all that, these are all right targets for employees to feel that they're taking their data or taking their work with them, whether it belongs to the company or not. So stay tuned for our random thought. All right. Are you a VIP? More importantly, are you a cybersecurity law firm of Texas VIP? What's VIP, you may ask? VIP stands for Virtual Information Protection. For those organizations that may not need a full-time resource to handle their cybersecurity and privacy needs, they can hire the Cybersecurity Law Firm of Texas on an outsourced basis to handle those needs. If you want to learn more, please click the link below. A random thought on Insider Thread as well. But this is an actual case, and this was out of the creepy files. And I read this, and I'm like, really? And it happened in the Dallas Fort Worth area, which is where I am. But anyway, so ADT, the security camera, the alarm company, they've started informing people here back in April I guess, of 2020 that they had an employee that had remote access to over 220 customers in the Dallas area for over a 7 year period. So there was a technician that worked for ADT that was installing people's systems and now getting admin rights to those um, by putting his email as a potential contact email, giving him remote access to all of the technology, whether it be cameras, whatever that was in the house that ADT ran, and ADT, I don't do them here in Dallas, but I did them when I was up in Pennsylvania. They have a lot of technology that you can put inside your house that you can actually remotely access through your app. It's called the ADT Pulse app. And this lawsuit was brought in Florida. It's a class action lawsuit against ADT for this behavior of this employee. And so, what ADT was doing, they were trying to not make this get public. They were calling the people that were impacted, or the customers, and saying, "Hey, we have this problem." And then I think they were offering them to sign a non-disclosure agreement for discounts. They were trying to keep it very, very quiet that this employee was doing that. But the lawsuit says that the ADT technician granted himself remote access to the security cameras that he actually installed. And the class action is saying ADT is responsible because it allowed any of the company's technicians to grant themselves this type of admin remote access to customers' applications. And so, there was even saying there was even one employee that had access to 200 accounts, right? And so the tech evidently added his email address, like I said before, to the customer account so they can actually receive and they had their own credentials to get remote access. And this becomes for 7 years this employee was doing this. And so there's two class action suits. ADT customers has a class action suit, and then the families or the people that were actually impacted through this monitoring brought a lawsuit. And that both cases are in Florida. But it goes to show you how we trust the people that work for us. We hire someone, we trust them to do the right thing. And I don't believe that, I don't necessarily know how rampant this was, but if there's a way to get around certain things or certain aspects of technology, your techs, your people, your IT people, the people that are installing it or whatever, they will know how to get around it because they work with it. And so if you don't, as a company, take the stance of looking at someone as a potential insider threat, how this can run rampant. I mean, they said that he was immediately fired once they figured this out, but they just started notifying people in April 2020. So this has been going on, at least you can probably say at least 7 years ago, until recently that they found this out. So why weren't they monitoring their technicians' access in the way they're installing this, and what vulnerability or what existed in that process that allowed them to go undetected for so long? That's all interesting. It'll come out. I'll keep my eye on it, but I just thought it was very creepy, but B, it's another case of an insider doing something really bad that's putting the company at risk. In this case, monitoring other people's security systems when he didn't have a right to do so. And it's curious to see whether or not ADT actually explicitly said, "Thou shalt not do this." You have your policies or whatever that you put out there, and it'll be interesting if they missed it, if it's there, or they just missed it and it wasn't there, because an employee can say, "Well, hey, you didn't tell me I couldn't do it," even though your average person would think that would be a little bit too far. It'll be interesting to see if they said, "No, this is something that he was outside of policy, he was breaking the rules," or even if they had any rules. So like I said, found that interesting. Hopefully you found it too interesting as well. You have a good day. All right, thanks. Talk again soon. Bye bye.